Hello, welcome back. It is Monday, November 28th, 2022, and I want to follow up on my earlier discussion last week on Elizabeth Holmes and whether or not she will be serving out her full prison sentence of 11 years. We looked at the traditional planets and what they were doing in her chart at that point, and today I wanted to bring in the outer planets to see if they change the story or if they enhance it further. So I've got her chart now pulled up. Remember, it's not a time chart, so we're only looking at the planets themselves, not angles, not houses. And the moon itself, we're going to have to leave as a question mark because we aren't sure if it's late Aquarius or early Pisces. But as I said before, we've got lots of information looking just at the planets themselves. Remember, we talked about with her traditional planets, she has that Sun in square to the malefics, Mars and Saturn. However, that Sun was helped by the fact that it was in trine to her North Node. So this is a very innovative, forward-looking, iconoclastic Sun in Aquarius that connects through the North Node in Gemini, can get her ideas and visions, doing things her own way out into the world. However, she encounters serious roadblocks with the Mars and Saturn square to that Sun. The biggest roadblock, of course, was that the machine that she was touting and bringing in billions of dollars to develop was actually a dud. It didn't work. But also, she is able, through the kind of forces of manipulation and control represented by Mars and Saturn, she is able to draw in support from others, the two benefics together in Capricorn. And so let's look to see what happens when we bring in the outer planets. Now, Uranus itself is conjunct the South Node. And so notice how it's in Sagittarius, that visioning, wanting to make something, it's almost like electricity coming down from the sky. She wants to just create this huge vision in the world. It supports her Aquarius Sun by sextile, just by 2 degrees apart. And so the power of that Aquarius Sun, that new invention she wants to bring into the world, it's almost like it comes to her by divine inspiration with that Uranus sextile. But with Uranus on the South Node, it becomes an issue of the tide going out around that Uranus, that she's got this excitement, this energy, this new invention, but yet it's in the South Node where things can dissipate. They can kind of almost work like they're on shifting sand. They can dissolve. And so you can see that this certainly happened with her invention. And then also, if we look at what is happening in her chart with Neptune, we see Neptune is in Capricorn, but it is conjunct her Jupiter and distantly her Venus in Capricorn. So that the two benefics together, that ability she has to use her manipulation and control to get what she wants from others, the power of Neptune is thrown in. I heard astrologer Lynn Bell say, this is kind of an enchantress aspect when you've got Venus and Jupiter and Neptune all together. So this vision that we talked about, because it's in fall, Jupiter and Capricorn, she could see things that were just a lot bigger and more important than they really are. When you throw in Neptune, that just enhances the power of this vision and the powers to deceive, so that she was able to use her scorpionic need to kind of control and manipulate things to deceive is emphasized by Neptune being here in Capricorn with her Jupiter. And then also, if we look at Pluto itself, Pluto is at 2 degrees Scorpio. And so when she was born, it had only been in Scorpio for about a year or two. And so Pluto and Scorpio draws power from delving deep, being able to investigate things and see what's beneath the surface and drawing power from that. And you think of Pluto as riches, drawing ore and gold out of the ground. And this was really what she was attempting to do with her machine, that she could kind of, through a drop of blood, was able to just open up a world of medical diagnoses, that she was able to use that machine to evaluate, to kind of dig deep and see what the person is actually experiencing. And so you notice this Pluto is also supporting that Jupiter in Capricorn. So here we've got her enchantress aspects here with Neptune. Pluto comes along and it just really adds power to that ability she has to go to other people and get what she wants out of them. And so you can see it's kind of interesting here how the outer planets didn't change the story, but my gosh, they sure enhanced it, didn't they? And if you look at what is happening with the outer planet transits, you can see a similar story. We talked about how really the story of her whole case is told by Saturn moving across the planets in her chart. But what is happening with Uranus? Because you think Uranus has been over here in Taurus. And so Uranus in Taurus has been for a long time making a nice trine to her Capricorn planets, giving her that electricity that she was able to generate buzz and gather all sorts of donations. But if we see what has been happening to it in the past year or so when she was found guilty and sentenced, we know that it's been in square to that sun. And in fact, that sun has kind of been ground zero for the Saturn-Uranus square, because Saturn has been on her sun and Uranus has been in square to it. So definitely, you finished your feast and now it's time to pay the bill type of aspect with Saturn there. And Uranus is kind of like, almost like bringing the full forces of human existence into that confrontation. And it's interesting, you think of Uranus being the media, and there's been, a number of podcasts about her, tons of articles. There's been a TV documentary and then also a docudrama about her called The Dropout. So all that electricity that she was using to generate, her wealth earlier, now it's bringing very negative and unwelcome attention to her. And then if you look at what has been happening with Neptune, we know that Neptune has been in Pisces since 2012. And so when it reached a square point to her nodes in 2018, that is when she had to relinquish, let go of her company, had to pay back fines, and it's also when she's indicted. So Neptune at the south bending of the nodes tells us all the sand has run out of the hourglass and there's nothing left. Just the kind of ultimate draining out. And so that was the point that really everything was over for her. And from then on, it was a struggle, as Neptune moved further on into Pisces, just an effort to save her freedom, really, from not having to go to jail. And that she's been able to avoid it so far is kind of indicative of Neptune kind of having a nice sextile to her Mercury over the past couple of years, but that's past now. Neptune has moved further on. And then finally, what has Pluto been doing? And we know that Pluto has been in Capricorn since 2008. And so Pluto specifically, when all of her legal troubles started, I'm sorry, that's not right. When all of her legal troubles started, she was having Pluto and Saturn actually crossing her Mercury. So bringing that intense forces of almost like all of the revengeful forces out in the world, the investors who'd been defrauded, the prosecutors who'd had her slip away a number of times. All those forces kind of came down upon her at that point. And now we know Pluto is moving on into Aquarius next year. It will be in the early degrees of Aquarius when she's supposed to report to jail, and she will be having, at that point, her Pluto square, which is a midlife crisis for most of us. But that's when a lot of things in life become very real. So anyway, you can see how all of the outer planets, again, just emphasize what has been going on in her life. And so let's look to my prediction that she will be out of jail by January of 2025 and see if the outer planets also tell us that as well. And so we'll look at her chart with January of 2025. I'm just kind of picking a random date of January 31st of 2025. And so we notice here at this point, she's got Uranus is no longer squaring that sun. Uranus is now at 23 degrees Taurus. And so it's making a trine to that Mercury in Capricorn. So you think of our mobility being represented by Mercury, and Uranus bringing freedom. So I think that's one good indication that the Uranus transit could be telling us that she will be out of jail by then. Neptune is interesting, is not doing anything too significant to the basic planets in her chart. However, it is in sextile to that Chiron. So bringing some relief from suffering would be one way we could look at that aspect. And then finally, we notice Pluto is still making that square to itself. And so that's why I was thinking she will be released, but she'll still be under many restrictions at that point. Maybe some sort of a home confinement, having to report to a parole board frequently, having to make some sort of community restitution. So I wouldn't think she's out of jail free at that point, but my prediction is that she won't be physically in jail, that she'll be facing some other kinds of retribution for her verdict. So in any case, I've got this all marked on my calendar. I'm going to be checking in January of 2025. And so I encourage you to do so too and see if I am right. So thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you next week. Bye.